What's going on, everybody? So today we're going to talk about how you can mix your kick and 808 together perfectly and get that trap sound that you hear today. So let's jump right into this. Okay, so here's what the kick and 808 sounds like in this track. So we're going to walk through everything that I did with my kick, my 808, how I mixed them together, every little detail so that you can get the same exact thing. So I've done some tutorials like this on mixing your kick and 808 before, but I'm doing things a little bit differently now, so I want to make an update to it because it sounds a lot better than what I used to have. So things have gotten simpler and things have changed in the process. So let's take a look at exactly what I'm doing. So the first thing that you need to do, and the most important step, is finding a good kick sample and a good 808 sample. This is the kick that I'm using. It sounds like this. So you can see that it's just completely crushed here. It's got lots of low end. It's got that punch to it that you like. This is the 808 I'm using. So a solid 808 to start with. So those are two key things that you need to make sure that you have before we even get started here. So in the sample here, I'm using one voice and I turned snap off for both of them. One voice, snap off. The kick was hitting loud enough so I didn't have to mess with the volume or turn it up or anything. I just left it how it was, but the 808 needed a little boost, so I put the volume on 0 instead of -12 where it's usually at when you put a sample in here. So for the kick, what I ended up doing was putting it down an octave. So instead of hitting here, it's hitting down here. And you can hear that down here sounds way better. So keep that in mind when you're playing with your kick samples. Sometimes C3 isn't the best sound that you have. If you go down an octave, it usually sounds better. And it depends on the sample. Some samples you won't need to go down. Some samples will sound good on C3. But it all depends on the sample you're using. So if your kick sounds a little too high end at the C3, but it sounds a little bit too dead in the C2, maybe that doesn't sound as good as it does for me. Maybe it sounds too low. You would want to go somewhere in between. And a good place to do it is wherever your 808 is starting. So in my case, mine's starting on an A, but yours might be on a D or an E or something like that. You would put this up to, the D or the E or the F or whatever note that your 808's starting on. That's usually a good guide to go to if C isn't going to work in your favor. So that's it for the kick. I'm not even doing any EQing on my kick. I just have it there just in case I want to do it. So besides that, it's just leveling at that point. So you can see it's hitting pretty hard, but it doesn't always need to hit 4 over or 5 over or something like that. You just need to get a good marriage with that and the 808. So you're just going to have to play around with it once you get all these settings tweaked. And before we jump on to the 808, on my master channel, I have it on my pre-master in this case, but you can just put it on your master. I have a clipper, a soft clipper. I'm using T-Rax. So you can use a soft clipper. I have mine more towards this side of the slope, but if you just leave it right in the middle, it sounds just as good regardless. This clipper right here is just going to allow the kick to go this high without it sounding completely effed up. Like if we took this off, you can hear it has that like backwards distortion. It kind of drowns everything out. It just doesn't sound good because it's hitting so high. So once you put that clipper on, it really cleans it up. Okay, so on to the 808 now. Okay, so for the 808, what I did is I turned the volume up to 0 like I said. Okay, so what I did is I made the 808 pattern, and I'll show you what that looks like right now. Alright, so I made that 808 pattern, but I turned down the sustain so that it's not going to play the full note. It's only going to play as long as the decay is going for. So if I had this all the way up, it would play the full sample every time. You see how that 808 lasts a long time and then you turn it down and it fizzles out faster. When you do it this way, you have more room to turn the 808 up to a higher level because that really loud part of the 808's hitting really fast and then dizzling out faster. So you have more room to play with the 808 when you make the 808 shorter, and you would do that only in certain cases. Sometimes you want the 808 to be longer, sometimes you don't, but in the case of this beat, we wanted it to be shorter. So I went ahead and I found a good level and I just turned it down to 6. And that seemed to be a perfect level. So what I did is I did some sidechain EQing with my kick and 808 because I don't like to do compression sidechaining. That does too much in my opinion. So what I do when I do this is I go into my kick EQ. I find where it's peaking. So it's peaking around here. So somewhere between 50 and 55-ish. And then I go in my 808 and that's the spot that I'm going to pick to duck it. So I have this on 63, close enough. And to get this little thing to pop up here to trigger the EQing, what you're going to do is you're going to make a point. So let's say I make a new point here. What you're going to want to do is pull back this red rim right here. Boom. And it's going to go down in a separate layer just like that. So you can pull it down, you can play with the Q and make it smaller. And then what you're going to do is you're going to click this auto right here. And you're going to click this button right here. And this is going to allow for the external sidechain to work. So once you have that button clicked, you have the slope and you have it on the right frequency. What you're going to do is you're going to go to your kick and you're going to go audio to 808. And then it's automatically going to fill in the stereo sidechain. If it doesn't fill this stereo sidechain in, go back because you're going to need to follow the steps I just talked about. You're going to have to click that button to allow for external sidechain. So once you do that, you're good to go. So now when your kick plays, it should be ducking those lower frequencies in your 808 right where the kick is hitting at its punchiest point. And if you don't have the FabFilter Pro EQ, lucky for you, you can do it with the Ableton Stock EQ. So what you would do is you would set this frequency right here to whatever that was before. So let's say it was 55. We got to make this the right kind of a bell here. And let's test it really quick. So maybe we play with the Q a little bit, make it about that. And then we'll go down -6 every time the kick hits. So maybe we open the kick MIDI right here and we do this. We automate it. So put it down like -6 or -5, wherever you're feeling good. And then you want to try to get it the whole length of the kick. So we'd listen to the kick and see how long it is. So the kick's actually shorter than that. And you can see how it's now doing the same thing on our EQ8 down here. So you would do that for each of the kicks. Make sure these aren't too long so that the 808's not being ducked for too long. And then you can mess with your Q settings here. You can put it on the right frequency, and then you can play with how low you want the gain to go. So that's how you could do it in Ableton. All right, so the only part that we haven't talked about yet is leveling them together. So it's first a good idea to start with having your lead on and getting the 808 at a right level. So you want to be able to hear your 808 over the melody with no problem whatsoever, but you don't need it to be so loud that it drowns out the rest of the song. So find a happy balance, find where it sits good with you, and then we can put the kick in, and we want it to be so that the kick hits hard enough so it gives that little distortion punch, and it's louder than the 808, so it plays over top of it. And since we have some of that sidechaining going on, it's going to help out a little bit. So without it, and with it. So it's just adding that little punch right at the top, but it's not so aggressive and so crazy that it just makes it sound bad like this. Actually, that doesn't sound too bad, but you can tell that it's a little too loud. Because it's kind of drowning out the melody. So that's a happy little medium right there. And and you can use my levels as a reference. Alright guys, so that's how you meld your kick and your 808 together. You mix them together, you get them to sit perfectly in the mix. I hope you guys liked that one. Smash the like button if you did, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here, because we're dropping daily tutorials and you're not going to want to miss out on them. But besides that, I'll be catching you guys again in the next one. Peace out.